Now, there are some customers who are paying Slack a lot of money. There are 87 customers paying over $1 million a year to use Slack. And that has been growing. So those are the big fish. Those are the whales in the system. I think that's where Benioff sees that he has an opportunity. Maybe there's another 500 customers who will spend $1 million a year. Maybe there's more than that. Maybe there's 1,000 customers. And you know what? If anybody knows who those customers are, it's Benioff and Salesforce, because they know who's got big, huge sales teams. They know who's using their CRM systems. They know who's using Tableau. They already have them as customers. And they can just look at that list of, let's say, the top 500 Salesforce customers and look at the top 500 list at Slack. And I bet you when they looked at those two lists, they said, wow, Slack is not into these large organizations yet. We have an opportunity to help them and accelerate and grow that 87 people spending $1 million a year on the product. Maybe we can make it 870, right? Add a zero. And that would be a thesis that could work. Revenue was up 50% year over year. So that is a high growth company. And if you look at how they grew, they grew to 200 million for Q1, 215 million, which is up 49% year over year. And obviously that's only 7% quarter over quarter. They're up to 130,000 total paid customers. So I think that they're very popular amongst smaller companies, but not the big companies. And they're not as predatory. Like if you look at the pricing of Slack, they only charge you for people who use the product. They kind of got some interesting, not cutthroat ideas in the product. So if you were to sign a 1,000-person company up and only 100 people use it, they only bill you for 100. I love that as a user, but it does fly in the face of sort of the best practice of everybody just charging however many number of accounts that you have, not just the active ones. In terms of the winners, congrats to Stuart and the founding team and the investors in Slack. It's the end of a journey in a way. Usually these companies are not destroyed anymore. It used to be when a company got bought, you could kind of flip a coin. It's the end of the brand, like in the Yammer days, which Microsoft bought for $1 billion, and you don't hear anybody talking about Yammer. Usually the big companies would screw up the acquisitions. Now they've gotten really good at it. So Facebook left Instagram alone, and YouTube was kind of put in their own building and left alone by Google. You're starting to see this best practice. Tableau has obviously done well under Salesforce, where the big acquiring company lets the culture exist and doesn't break the culture, doesn't break the momentum of the company. So I would assume that Mark Benioff is smart enough, wise enough, given his knowledge of the history and the industry and building such a giant company, that he knows not to screw these things up. So it's kind of a bummer, I think, that the company couldn't keep growing and then use its public stock to acquire other companies. And it does seem like there was some sort of a product roadblock inside the company where they just couldn't get new features out, couldn't get new competitive products in market to get people excited. They just did a good job of being solid, right? And there was no real competitor except for Microsoft Teams to come out of this. HipChat gave up and wound up selling to them. So you have to wonder, is there going to be a new chat enterprise software that emerges? Now that Salesforce has bought this, I think you're going to see another round of people looking and saying, maybe now is a good time to launch a competitor. Now you'd say, why would that be? Very simple. When these big companies acquire them, they get a bunch of indigestion, right? We talked about that. Like, can they acquire this without squashing it? Can they acquire it and accelerate its growth as opposed to slow it down? Who's going to run it? Do you have somebody great? Is Stuart going to stay with the company, or is Salesforce going to run it? Those are all the questions that are going to come up, and they'll be the second order questions if, in fact, this deal goes through. But either way, congratulations to all the investors. For me, it would be disappointing if, for example, Uber were to sell, as I'm still a shareholder in Uber, if they were to sell, to Google or to, Amazon, I would feel good in a way, but, because it would be the end of the journey and it would be an exit. But I would also be kind of bummed that they didn't keep that independent spirit alive and become $1 trillion company eventually, or become, a $500 billion company. You really, as an investor, want to see them become independent concerns that exist forever, like Amazon and Facebook and Google have, and Tesla has. Tesla could have been taken out at 50 billion, 75 billion by Apple or Google, but now at 500 billion or whatever their market cap is, they're going to be a strong independent company for some time to come. So great job. It's opportunistic, right? You have the stock market is on a tear, but Slack's stock has not gone up and appreciated the way other companies have. So when they have that funny money and you've got a lot of equity. That's why probably half of this is cash, is because the people who are selling their shares in Slack, if that report is in fact correct, they would like to cash in some chips and get cash. But they probably won't have the upside of maybe owning it. Now, if Salesforce stock goes up 10%, like Amazon did after Whole Foods, it went up not 10%, but the value of Whole Foods. Theoretically, on paper, Benioff could get this for free. If the market cap goes up $25 billion because people believe that Salesforce is a bigger player and that this is accretive and that this is going to be a catalyst for Salesforce's existing products and that Salesforce's existing team is going to be a catalyst to drive more people to use Slack and adopt it because it's more trusted in the large enterprises. I wouldn't be surprised if Salesforce goes up $10 billion, $20 billion in the month after this acquisition, if it in fact occurs, because that'd be a great sign that it was, a great acquisition and the market believed in it. So we'll see. It's a bittersweet if true, for the shareholders. I'm sure they would have rather seen it become a large independent company. And if you just think about, like, if you're a Slack user, they have built-in audio and video that hasn't changed and is kind of buried in the product. And it hasn't changed in a year or two. I haven't seen any new features. And I always thought to myself, why are people even using Zoom if they're using Slack? Because when you're in a Slack room, you just click start a call and you don't have to install another piece of software. You don't have to leave that piece of software. You can use the same chat room as opposed to firing up a second chat room. And I just think Slack didn't do a great job of marketing these products to existing users. I never got an upsell inside of Slack like, hey, would you like to set up a call? Or, can you make a channel that is a reoccurring weekly meeting? So let's say you had a weekly Wednesday staff meeting. Could you make a room that was also the call and have it be a calendar item, sort of thing? It just didn't seem like the product vision. It almost like it topped out, right? And they didn't have somebody there making bold visionary bets, which is something that happened sort of with Twitter too. They kind of just stagnated and they couldn't get really great products out there. Remember, Moments was a bust. These fleets are a bust. The audio is a bust. They screwed up Vine. You can see when a company's product team is putting out stuff that doesn't work and isn't refined, or their product is just stagnant, that's when like these things can occur. And actually, Benioff was in the running to possibly buy Twitter. That was a really weird one. Remember that? He was thinking about buying Twitter. So anyway, he's an ambitious guy. He likes to buy things and build big buildings. Good for Benioff. I think it'll work out for them. I think they can get that $800 million in revenue. I think they can 10x it over the next, couple of years. And if they do, that's a pretty good deal, right? Get to $5 billion, $10 million. I'm sure there's $5 to $10 million in revenue left to unlock there, and it would wind up paying for itself. Okay, great job, Benioff. Sorry to Slack shareholders if this is in fact the end of the road. I would have liked to seen it go a different direction, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by Our Crowd helps you invest early in pre-IPO companies alongside professional VCs. If you're interested in investing, you can join Our Crowd for free at OurCrowd.com.